I noticed that she was in the middle of another call to a number in the local Pittsburgh area. I didn't recognize the number and looked in her contacts. Sure enough, there it was, listed under someone named Mac. I waited until the call was finished and gave the app time to copy the audio file and transcript to the cloud. About a half hour later, I saw they were both available. I pulled up the transcript and printed it out so I could read it while listening to the call. Sitting back down with transcript in hand, I pulled up the audio file and hit play. "McGregor," a man's voice said. "Mac, it's me, Kay." "Hey, Kay. How's California? Getting a good tan?" "Yeah, it's fun. We have a problem. Shane knows. He said he knows everything." "Shit," Mac said. "We talked about this. You know what has to be done. Are you sure?" McGregor said. "Absolutely, and it has to be done Thursday night." "Why Thursday?" he asked her. "Two reasons. First off, I'm going to send him something late tonight. He probably won't see it until tomorrow sometime. He'll be so upset, he probably won't even want to defend himself. Secondly, I'll be here until Friday, and if I know him, he'll probably have me served with divorce papers the second I land in Pittsburgh." "Divorce?" McGregor asked. "Yeah, he found out about me and said he's having divorce papers drawn up." "What are you going to do that'll have him so upset?" he asked her. "He thinks I'm a 304, she told him. "So, I'm going to show him just how bad I really am." McGregor laughed at that. "Well, you are one, aren't you?" he asked her. She chuckled at that. "Yeah, but he has no idea just how much of a naughty girl I can be. So, it has to be done Thursday night, and it has to look like a home invasion. We've had to deal with quite a few of those recently, so it's doable," he said. "Was this guy a police officer?" I asked myself. "Tell me, does he have a gun in the house?" "No, he's been wanting to get one, but I've never allowed it." "Good. What about the Rugrats?" he asked her. "I really don't want them hurt, but there can't be any witnesses. Understand?" "Yeah," he said. "I understand. What's in it for me?" "Shane has $1 million life insurance policy, and his employer has a $500,000 policy on him as well. I'll give you $100,000 out of that. You're asking for an awful lot. Make it $250,000 and we have a deal." "Okay," she said after a few moments. "So let me get this straight. You want me to take out your husband and possibly your two boys for $250,000. You want it done this Thursday night, and you want it to look like a home invasion." "That's right, and I want you to handle it yourself. I know you've done this before, and I don't want anyone else screwing it up. There's too much at stake." "I understand. You do realize I'm taking quite a risk here." "We both are," she said. "All right, but I want some of that hot sex of yours when you get back." She chuckled. "Of course, I'll even let you have me in my own bed. We can celebrate D-Day together." "D-Day?" he asked. "Yeah, Death to Shane Day." They laughed at that. "I've got to get going. I won't call until I get back. Don't worry. I'll act like the distraught widow and no one will ever know the truth." "Okay, I'll text you when it's done." "I can't wait. Talk to you later." "Bye," he said, ending the call. I sat there, stunned, not believing what I had just heard. My so-called loving wife just promised to pay some a-hole $250,000 to have me and possibly the boys murdered this Thursday night. What the hell is she involved with? I asked myself. And who is this McGregor character? Is he a policeman? And what are they doing that's so bad I and the boys would have to be murdered? I sent the audio file and the transcript to Marion's email address and called her when I verified the email had been sent. She answered on the second ring. "Marion Hawkins," she said when she answered. "Marion, this is Shane McKnight. I just sent you a couple files. I intercepted a call between Kay and some guy named McGregor, and they just plotted to have me and the boys murdered this Thursday." "What?" she asked, shocked. "Are you sure about that?" "I'm absolutely certain of it. I sent you an audio file and a transcript." "How did you get audio and a transcript?" "Never mind. You can explain it later. I just wrapped up a case and I'm on my way to the office. I want you to come by right now. I'll clear my calendar and call the DA's office and my private investigator." "On my way," I said, ending the call. I grabbed my tablet and my laptop along with the printout of the transcript just in case and headed out. When I got to Marion's office, I noticed two men were with her, looking at the transcript. Marion waved me inside, then shut the door. She introduced them to me. Bill Rollins was her private investigator, and the other man was Ryan Jacobs, an assistant district attorney. "Can you tell me how you got this?" Ryan asked. I explained the apps I put on Kay's phone. One archived her entire device, including emails, text messages, videos, and photos, while the other recorded her calls and saved them to the cloud as audio files. It also transcribed her calls, saving the text files to a remote location. I'm not sure we can use this as evidence in court, given the way you got it, he told me. Look, Mr. Jacobs, the phones and the service are in my name and I pay the bills. This kind of tech is exactly why I refuse to use my phone for anything other than making calls. Are you willing to swear out an affidavit to that effect? He asked me. Absolutely. I'll even give you access to whatever I have so you can go through it yourself. I'll need to talk to my boss about this first. Do you have any idea who this McGregor guy is? I shook my head. Not directly. I know Kay had an affair with him a couple years ago, according to her emails. He even sent her some pictures and video. Show me, he said. I pulled up my laptop and, using the Wi-Fi in Marion's office, logged into the cloud account where Kay's phone had been archived. I went into her Stuff folder and located the email sent from mac@xxxxxx.com. One of the emails she kept included a fairly long video showing her having sex with this guy. We watched until we came upon a frame that clearly showed his face. Damn, Bill said. I know that guy. Who is he? I asked. That's Alfred McGregor. He's one of Pittsburgh's finest. A captain in the police department. Are you certain of that? Ryan asked. Absolutely, Bill said. Ryan looked at the frame closer for a few seconds. I think you're right. Can you print this out? He asked Marion. She nodded her head. Give me a second to hook this laptop up to my desk printer, she said, grabbing a USB cable. Soon, we had a color photo of McGregor having sex with Kay. Ryan looked at me before speaking again. Can you get me access to all this information? He asked. I can. Do you have a laptop available? He nodded, then opened his laptop bag and pulled out his computer. He fired it up and connected to Marion's Wi-Fi. In no time, I had him set up to view everything. I think it would be best if we put Mr. McKnight in protective custody until we can get this all sorted out, he told Marion. She shook her head and rejected his offer. No way. First of all, he has 2 young boys to take care of. Second, if you put my client in protective custody, you'll be signing his death warrant. There's no way I'm going to let you put him in a position where this McGregor guy can get hold of him. I have a couple guys I can assign to protect him, Bill said. Marion nodded her head. Do it, she said. Ryan looked back at me before speaking again. Do you have any idea why they would want you murdered? He asked. I pulled up my laptop and showed them emails I had found between Kay and Alfred. I don't know what any of this means, but I found it while searching through her emails. They looked through the emails I brought up, and as I watched, Ryan's eyes got wide. Holy crap, he said. What? Marion asked. Our office has been working with the DEA on a recent uptick in prescription drugs showing up on the black market, OxyContin, opioids, that sort of thing. They've been trying to find the source of the drugs, but so far, they've had no luck, he said. He looked at me. Where does your wife work? He asked. I told him about her job at the clinic. Do you think my wife is the source of these drugs? I asked. That's what these emails suggest. It also appears McGregor is involved as well. If your wife thinks you know about all this, she would certainly be inclined to want you out of the way. He turned back to Marion. Are you sure you don't want your client in protective custody? So McGregor can get to him easier? Hell no. What I want is McGregor behind bars, immediately. It's not that simple. We need to go through channels, bring in internal affairs, conduct an investigation. We're talking about a police captain here, not some rookie beat cop. It'll take time. We don't have time for your political bullshit, Marion said angrily. By the time you go through normal channels, I'll be collecting Social Security and my client will be dead. We know that McGregor plans to murder him and his 2 children on Thursday. That gives us less than 3 days. What do you want me to do? Ryan asked. Call your boss right now, she said. He's probably at lunch right now, Ryan said. I know he is. He's probably getting back in his car right about now. Call him and put him on speakerphone. Ryan nodded his head and pulled out his phone. He put it on speaker and set it on Marion's desk. Giles, a man said when he answered the phone. Boss, this is Ryan Jacobs, Ryan said. I'm with Marion Hawkins and a client of hers, and it seems we have a problem. Oh, Giles asked. What kind of a problem? Can't it wait till I get back in the office? I just finished lunch. Ryan looked at Marion, who looked back with a shit-eating grin on her face. Not really. We have evidence that one of our esteemed police captains may be involved in a murder-for-hire scheme and a plot to distribute stolen drugs. Who might this police captain be, Marion? Giles asked. It's McGregor, L. McGregor. No way. He's one of our most highly decorated officers. I can't believe he'd be involved in something like that. We have pretty compelling evidence, boss, Ryan said. Like what? Giles asked. A recorded telephone call, along with a lot of incriminating emails, Ryan said. Shit, Giles said. We don't have time for political bullshit, Giles. According to what we have, the hit is supposed to take place Thursday night. And there's children involved. Shit, 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 Giles said. You already said that, Giles. What are you going to do about it? All right, Ryan, let Jenkins handle your cases for a couple days. I want you to work exclusively on this and bring me a solid case in 48 hours. Can you do that? I can, Ryan said. Keep it to yourself in the meantime. I'll put a bug in the chief's ear and we'll give IA a heads up. If there's anything to this, we'll get him off the street, pronto. Will that work for you, counselor? For now, Marion said. But so help me, Giles, if anything happens to my client and or his children, I'll make a stink you won't believe. And you can kiss ever getting re-elected to anything goodbye. Don't worry, Marion. I'll do my job. I hope so, Giles. I truly hope so. Ryan ended the call and collected his gear. I'd better get started on this right now. We'll definitely need to swear out an arrest warrant for your wife. You say she's due back on Friday? I nodded my head. Okay, I'll see about transmitting this to California, so the locals there can pick her up. Can I get your number in case I need to get more information from you? He asked me. I nodded my head and wrote my number and home address down on a slip of paper and handed it to him. He thanked me as he put the knot in his pocket. One last thing, we'll need to search your home. I'll get the search warrant and call you when we're ready to come over. I understand, I said. He nodded his head, shook my hand and left. I guess this changes things regarding your divorce, Marion said after Ryan left. You think? I asked sarcastically. Sorry, I said, seeing her reaction. All this has really pissed me off. It's not your fault. That's okay, Shane. I'd be a bit pissed off if I were in your shoes as well. So, I take it you want custody in the house? Yes, I doubt she'll be able to make child support from jail. I doubt it myself. We'll work something out. Just go take care of your kids, okay? I nodded my head. I will, I said. Bill came back into the room and addressed me. Do you have a security system in your house? He asked. I nodded my head. Yes, I do, I told him. All right, what about security bars on your windows? No, I've never cared for them. I understand, but I think that under the circumstances, you should have them, along with security doors. I have a contractor who can install them for you. You can take them down later if you want, when this is all over. Okay, I said, after giving it some thought. If nothing else, I figured it would slow McGregor down a minute or two. I'll have a man patrolling outside your house as well as a man inside, just in case, he said. I nodded my head. I'll also put a couple people on McGregor to see what we can find out. I'd handle it myself, but he knows me and he'd spot me in a heartbeat. That makes sense. I won't be home for a while. I need to go see the boys. No problem. Live your life as you normally would. Just be extra observant. Thanks, I will, I said. Look, if you hear anything from Kay or McGregor, let me know immediately, Marion said. I don't care what time of day or night. I'll do that, I said before leaving. I headed to Cliff and Julie's house to see the boys and grab some dinner. It had been a long day, and I knew it was only going to get worse. Julie had made lasagna and dished up some for me when I got there. Cliff and I spoke as I ate. What's the word, Shane? He asked. I told him about the threat against me and the boys. He shook his head as I told him about the phone call between Kay and McGregor. Well, the boys are safe here, he said. Do you have a gun? He asked. No, Kay would never allow me to buy one. Said she was scared of them. Nonsense, hang on. He got up and came back a few minutes later with a 12-gauge pump shotgun. You know how to use one of these? He asked. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, qualified expert 4 years in a row. My dad has a shotgun much like that one. Good. It's fully loaded with rock salt. Not deadly, but it'll sting like hell. Take it and use it if you have to. What about you? I asked. He laughed. I have 2 more just like it and an AR-15. We're covered. Thanks, I said. Anytime. Look, son, I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am about all of this. It's not your fault. You didn't make her do what she did. I just don't know how I'm going to explain it to the boys. Explain what, Dad? I heard John ask from the door. I motioned for him to come over, then hugged him as hard as I could. John, I've never lied to you boys before, and I'm sure as hell not going to start now. You should know that you may hear some pretty bad things about your mother in the next few days. She's been cheating on you, hasn't she? He asked. I slowly nodded my head. How do you break it to your young children that their mother is a cheating, immoral woman? Yes, son, she has, I said. I hate her, he exclaimed, tears falling from his eyes. No, son, you can't ever say that. She's done some bad things and she'll have to pay for that. but she's still your mother. But you hate her, I can tell. Damn, I thought. How do you explain something like that to a 10-year-old boy? Thing is, he was right. At that moment, I hated her with every fiber of my being. It's different, son. What your mother did, she did specifically to hurt me. But if she hurt you, isn't she hurting Robbie and me as well? He asked. He was right again, and I was at a loss for words. She's hurting all of us. I don't think she fully understands that yet, but she will. In time, son, she'll understand. John wrapped his arms around me and buried his face in my shoulder. I could feel his tears as he cried. I love you, son. I always will. I love you too, Dad, he said. I held him for what seemed like forever. Then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out and saw Ryan's number on the screen. We're ready to head over to search your house, Mr. McKnight, he said when I answered. Thanks, Ryan. I'm on my way. I put John down and explained that I had to head home. By then, Robert had come into the room. I gave the boys a hug and a kiss goodbye and shook Cliff's hand. Julie gave me a hug at the door. I promised to fill them in the next time I saw them and left, shotgun in hand. I got home just as Bill's contractors were putting the finishing touches on the security bars now covering the windows. They had also installed security doors, and the foreman handed me the keys. I signed the paperwork agreeing to pay for the installation and put it on my credit card. I was somewhat surprised. The ornate iron bars looked better than I thought they would, but I still wasn't sure I wanted to keep them up after this was all over. I went in the house, unloaded the shotgun, and placed it against the wall in my home office, next to my computer. I put the shells in a desk drawer and kept the receiver open so it couldn't be mistaken for a loaded gun. Ryan and some officers showed up when I finished. I let them in, and one of them introduced himself as a DEA agent. Ryan showed me the search warrant, and they began their search. They looked through everything, but were careful to put things back as they were. After about an hour, I heard someone call from upstairs. Found something, boss, one of the officers said. I wondered what they could have found as I followed Ryan up the staircase. We went into the room Kay used as a craft and sewing room. The closet door was open, and a bookcase she used to stash craft items was rolled away from the wall. Behind it was a cutout in the wall that held two fairly large metal boxes. Ryan looked at me before speaking. Did you know this was here? He asked. I shook my head. No idea. I generally stay out of this room out of respect for Kay. Ryan put on a pair of latex gloves and opened the first box. Inside were bottles of pills and packets that looked like samples one might get from a doctor's office. They were marked Acme Medical. Ryan looked at me. Isn't this the company your wife's boyfriend works for? He asked. Yes, it is, I said. The DEA agent took a look at the pills and read the labels. These all appear to be Schedule II controlled medications, he said. We'll have to run tests to verify that, but it looks like she's got several drugs here, including Vicodin, OxyContin, and Percocet. He looked at Ryan. We'll need to pay a visit to this clinic. Ryan nodded his head. I agree, he said. Opening the second box, we saw several bundles of crisp $100 bills. Ryan counted the bundles before turning to me. Looks like your wife has been pretty busy. I estimate she has about $120,000 right here. I shook my head, shocked. We also saw an envelope in the box. Ryan took it out and looked inside. There was a statement from a local bank indicating she had another $150,000 stashed in a savings account. It looked as though she had been making regular deposits over the last year and a half, being careful not to go over the $10,000 reporting limit. Looks like she's been structuring her deposits. Did you know about this? He asked. I understood the basic idea behind structuring, where people would deliberately split up cash deposits so as not to trigger mandatory reporting. I had heard stories of business owners getting caught up doing that, and from what I heard, some of them lost all their money and faced several years in jail. No idea, I said. Ryan handed the boxes to a technician who dusted them for fingerprints. Ryan looked around a bit more and saw Kay's laptop on her desk. We'll have to confiscate this, he said. I nodded my head in understanding. And these, he added, after opening one of her drawers, seeing several file folders with paperwork I had never seen before. A drawer held a key I had never seen before. It looked like a key one might use for a mailbox. Ryan picked it up and looked at it closely before placing it inside a plastic bag. After looking around some more, he guided me out of the room and spoke to me in private. Shane, I'm afraid we're going to have to mark this room as a crime scene, he said. We're going to seal the door when we're finished, and I don't want anyone going in there until we're finished. Do what you have to do, I said. Just from what I've seen, this may become a federal case, since it looks like her boyfriend has been transporting this stuff across at least one state line, he said. You may get a visit from the FBI. What about McGregor? I asked. Well, If we find his fingerprints on any of this, I'd say we have a strong case against him, he said. We'll see. In the meantime, you stay out of trouble and let us know if anything happens. I will, I said. A couple hours later, everyone but Bill and one of his investigators had left, carrying boxes full of Kay's stuff. I just got word from my guy in the field. McGregor was spotted going into a mailboxes, etc. store. He was observed taking a package out and placing what looked like a paper lunch bag into a mailbox. About 10 minutes after he left, another person was seen opening the same box. That person took the bag and left. We've got pictures of the whole thing happening. It looks like that's how they're making the swaps. My guy made an inquiry and learned the box is registered to McGregor. Talk about hubris. Have you told Ryan? I asked. Yeah, I spoke to him just before he left. I don't get it. Why would a respected police officer do something like this? I have a hunch, but I need to look into it a bit more, he said. He motioned for the other man to join us. Shane, this is Peter Green. He works for me, and he'll be staying here with you overnight. He'll also accompany you wherever you go. I have another man outside who'll be keeping an eye on things from there. I shook Peter's hand and noticed he looked like a linebacker. Peter is a former Navy SEAL, so he can take care of himself. If anything happens, I want you to follow his lead. Got it? Got it, I said. Good. I'd better get going. You gents have a good evening and call if anything happens. We said our goodbyes, and I invited Peter to have a seat. I made a pot of coffee and ordered pizza for the two of us. We spent the evening eating pizza and watching television while swapping sea stories. Despite all appearances, Peter turned out to be a pretty nice guy. Finally, about 9 p.m., I checked for new activity on Kay's phone and finding none, grabbed the now-loaded shotgun, then turned in for the night, making sure Peter was set for the evening. Meanwhile, Kay was at the hotel. After I spoke with Mac Monday morning, I headed back to Dan's room. I felt somewhat bad about what we had planned, but knew that it was for the best. Mac and I had talked about this when we first started. I didn't like the idea, but Mac convinced me early on it would either be that or end up in jail for a very long time. I only hoped that he could manage to spare the boys somehow. Dan and I spent the day shopping and planning for the evening's activities. Standing here in front of the bedroom mirror, I took inventory of what I saw. The tiny skirt I wore came about 2 inches below my crotch and was shredded on both sides, showing off my legs. I thought about wearing a thong, but said, screw it, and decided to go pantyless. The top was nothing more than a tiny band that barely covered me and had several slits in the middle, showing off all my cleavage. I felt nearly naked wearing this thing and knew it wouldn't stay on for very long. I put on a pair of high heels and inspected myself in the mirror. God, I thought, giggling, even I would do me. I knew Shane would get a kick out of seeing me. Once I was finished, I went back to Dan's room and modeled my outfit for him. He took several pictures, making sure I posed so he could see me naked. Shane's gonna go nuts when he sees this, Dan said, laughing. You ready? I am. It's been a long time since I've done a gangbang. I hope I still have it in me. Oh, you do? How many guys you planning to take on tonight? As many as possible. The sky's the limit. We got to the club where Dan had reserved a room for a private party. We danced for a while, making sure to show off my assets to as many patrons as we could. In between dances, Dan spoke to several people, inviting them to join us later. Eventually, we went to the room and were followed by at least 15 guys. There was a table in the middle of the room with a leather-covered mattress on top. I climbed on top of the mattress as Dan invited the men inside. Once they all made themselves comfortable, he closed the door and set up his camera. I began by doing a striptease for my captive audience. It didn't take long, since I was practically naked already. When I was finished, I had nothing on, not even my shoes, and laid back on the mattress with my legs spread wide. Show of hands. Who wants to do me? I asked. They all raised their hands as I smiled. Well, then, what are you waiting for? Come over here and screw me. For the next few hours, I experienced more sex than I ever had in my entire life. I screwed them all, repeatedly. At one point, Dan had me sit up to give Shane and the boys a message. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know it was mean and hateful. At that point, though, I just didn't care. It was early in the morning when we finally stopped, too exhausted to go on. Dan cleaned me up as best he could and got me dressed. I can't remember having ever been so sore in my life, but it was a good kind of sore. The kind that made me realize just how well and thoroughly screwed I was. He helped me stagger back to the hotel and cleaned me up in his shower. It must have been about 1 a.m. or so when he laid me down in the bed. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow and didn't wake back up until the next afternoon. Meanwhile, Shane was at home. I woke up at 4:15 Tuesday morning when my tablet buzzed. letting me know I had received an email with an attachment. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and picked the tablet up. Opening my email, I found something from what I now knew was Dan's email address. I opened the email to find a short note telling me to watch the attached video. I opened the video and saw my soon-to-be ex-wife sitting on a mattress placed on a table wearing the shortest skirt I had ever seen her wear. She had no panties on. She stripped her clothes off and tossed them on the floor. She invited every man in the room to have sex with her. The men took her, over and over again. Disgusted, I fast-forwarded through most of the sex acts until I saw her looking at the camera as though she was getting ready to say something. What do you think of your wife now, a-hole? You like what you see? I certainly hope so, because it's the last time you'll ever get to see this body again. By this time Friday, you'll be dead meat. That's right, a-hole. My partner Mac is going to come over and send you to hell. Maybe the boys too. So, enjoy it while you can. Personally, I can't wait to get back so I can piss all over your graves. Then I'm going to take your insurance money and spend the rest of my life screwing everyone I can. Laughing, she turned back to the men, who were laughing and sneering, but then looked back at the camera one last time. By the way, a-hole, screw you, she exclaimed, holding up both middle fingers. And screw the boys. And screw your stupid family vacation. She laughed as she turned back to the men and continued her one-woman sex fest. Shocked and disgusted, I ended the video and sent it to Marion. I called her to let her know I had sent it. She answered on the first ring. Good morning, Shane, she said, sounding like she was still asleep. Everything okay? No, sorry to call you so early, but I just got a video from Kay and it's disgusting. But there's one part where she admits the plot to murder me and the boys. What? Marion asked, shocked. Yeah, it's pretty shocking. Okay, I'll take a quick look. Be in my office at 7:30 if you can. I'll be there, I said. I got up, unable to go back to sleep, showered, shaved and dressed. I went downstairs and made a fresh pot of coffee. Peter was already awake and watching the news. I offered him a cup of coffee, which he accepted. It was still early, so I made us both breakfast. We watched the news as we ate. I have to run to see my attorney early this morning. You're supposed to accompany me everywhere, right? That's what I was told, he said. Okay, do you need to freshen up, take a shower or anything? Already done, he said. I grabbed a couple of paper coffee cups and sleeves and poured us each a cup. Locking the door, we headed out. Marion was already in her office when we got there. Ryan and Bill were also in the office. She looked up as I came in and waved us inside. Good morning, Shane, she said. Ryan nodded and said a polite but curt, morning. Good morning, I said, nodding at Ryan. He looked like he hadn't gotten much sleep at all. We've been going through the video you got this morning, Marion said. I found the part you were talking about, and it sure looks like a confession to me. Looks like it to me as well, along with a threat of child endangerment. I've already informed my boss. What did he say? I asked. He agrees with my assessment of the situation. The arrest warrant was transmitted to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department last night, and the feds got one for Dan. They assure us that Kay and her lover will be picked up this morning. My office is fast-tracking the extradition papers even as we speak. That was fast, I said. Well, when there's a clear threat to children, we don't play around. Also, thanks to Bill's investigators and our friends at the DEA, we've been able to get enough to show probable cause to have McGregor arrested. They'll be picking him up at his apartment any time now, if they haven't already. I take it you've had some success in your investigation? I asked. We have. It seems McGregor had quite an operation working for him. Feds are officially calling it a criminal enterprise, which could mean a life sentence. Why? I asked, shaking my head. He's a police captain, for crying out loud. He's up to his eye teeth in debt, Bill said. His wife caught him cheating and divorced him a couple years back. Took him to the cleaners. He's barely able to make ends meet with child support, alimony, and everything else. Ryan looked at his watch. I'd better get going. I haven't slept in 2 days. Not much more I can do now but wait. Feds are going to hit several clinics in the area, and they're taking an interest in your wife's lover. Call me if you hear anything, okay? I nodded my head and shook his hand, thanking him for his efforts. This definitely changes things with your divorce, Marion said. There's no doubt the court will let her have the kids. Besides, she'll be behind bars. I suggest we wait to serve her until we see what the courts do. We'll have a much better chance if she's in jail. However, there is still the matter of the two biological fathers. I've taken a preliminary look at both of them. I don't think you're going to get much of anything out of Mike Schock, the father of your oldest child. He simply doesn't have any real assets to speak of. Dr. Winstead, however, is another matter. If you like, Shane, I can start the paperwork and maybe negotiate something with him. We might even be able to settle without ever having to file anything or go to court. Is that something you'd like to pursue? Absolutely, I said. All right, why don't you go on home, get some rest, and I'll be in touch. I thanked her and left, with Peter following close by. Meanwhile, Kay at her hotel. I awoke early in the morning to a loud pounding. At first, I thought it was in my head, but I soon realized it was the door. I looked at the clock, 5:30 a.m. Who could be pounding on the door this early in the morning? I shook Dan awake and he got out of bed, threw on his robe and staggered to the door. Police. Open up, I heard. Well, I thought that answers that. But why would the police be knocking on our door so early? As soon as Dan opened the door, several huge police officers entered the room, and two of them threw Dan against a wall, cuffing his hands behind his back. Two of the officers approached me as I lay in bed. One of them looked down at me. Are you Kay McKnight? One of them asked. Yes, I am, I said, still groggy. Get up, you're under arrest, he said. Arrest? I asked, pulling the covers up to my chin. For what? Conspiracy to commit murder, for one. You're also under arrest for violating federal laws regarding the illegal diversion and sales of controlled substances. Now, get up. I'm not dressed, can I at least put some clothes on? The officer motioned to two female cops who grabbed something halfway decent out of the closet. The male officers turned their backs as the females handed me a pair of jeans, some socks and underwear, and a t-shirt. I pulled the underwear and jeans on, keeping myself covered, and threw the t-shirt on as the female officers kept me covered up. I sat on the edge of the bed and put on my shoes and socks. The female officers lifted me up and turned me around, reading my Miranda rights as they cuffed me. I looked around, but Dan was already gone. What about my phone? I asked. One of the female officers grabbed it off the dresser and put it in her pocket. They led me out of the building and threw me in the back of a cruiser, its lights flashing. The policewoman who grabbed my phone sat in back with me as the other female officer sat in the front seat. Soon, we all headed to the station where we were booked. I felt so embarrassed when they took my mug shots. Can I at least make a phone call? I asked. The officer motioned to a phone on the desk, so I decided to call Shane. Can I use my phone? I asked. Sorry, it's being held as evidence. Use this one, she added, pointing to the desk phone. It took me a while to remember his number. I was so used to my contact list. He answered after the second ring, and I could tell he was in the car. What? He asked angrily. Shane, sweetie, it's me, I said, my voice shaky. No shit, he said. What do you want? Shane, I've been arrested, I told him. Yeah, that's what happens when you plot to murder your husband and children. By the way, they're picking up your partner in crime this morning. Oh no, I thought. Mac told me there was no way we would get caught. Please, Shane, I need help, I begged. Yeah, you do, he said. Maybe you can get some when you finally go to prison. In the meantime, screw you. He ended the call, leaving me to stare at the headset. I handed it back to the officer at the desk. How long will I be here? Can I post bail or something? No bail has been set. You're being held pending extradition to Pittsburgh. Oh God, I thought to myself. What about the man who was brought in with me? Dan King? The officer looked at her computer for a moment. Mr. King is currently being extradited to face federal charges in Columbus, she said. That's it. I thought I'm sunk. The officer took me to a holding cell where I sat on a cold, hard concrete seat and stared at the walls, shocked at how far and fast I had fallen. Meanwhile, Shane was at home. I ended the call with Kay and laughed. I couldn't believe the nerve of the witch. She actually expected me to help her after plotting to have me and the boys murdered. She could rot in prison for all I cared. Right now, I hated the witch more than I had ever hated anyone or anything in my entire life. Talk about nerve, I said. Peter smiled and nodded his head as I drove. Yeah, he said. We pulled up to my house and went inside. Out of curiosity, I checked to see if there was anything new on Kay's phone. There wasn't, so I called the hotel, explained the situation, and arranged to have her stuff packed up and sent home. Afterward, we sat in the living room and I turned on the television. Peter's phone rang, and he walked out of the room for a few minutes as I surfed the channels. Turn on the news, he said when he came back in the room. I changed to a local news channel, and we saw a reporter standing in an apartment parking lot. Captain Alfred McGregor, a highly decorated police officer, was shot early this morning, right here at this apartment complex, the reporter said, pointing to the apartment building behind him. According to authorities we spoke to, The shooting took place during an arrest that came about as the result of an investigation into a conspiracy to allegedly sell stolen prescription drugs. Details of the arrest and the investigation have not been released, but we have been told the police chief will be holding a press conference later today. As I watched, my phone rang. I saw it was from Bill, so I answered. "Did you see the news?" he asked. "I did. What happened?" "From what I was told, McGregor opened the door and started shooting when he saw the officers," Bill said. "That's when they returned fire, killing him." "So, I guess I'm safe then, right?" I asked. "Let's not jump the gun. I'd like Peter to shadow you for the rest of the week. I don't think McGregor has anyone coming after you, but let's err on the side of caution." "Sounds good to me," I said. "Have a good day. I'll talk to you later." "Thanks," I said, ending the call. I looked at Peter. "Guess you're staying here for the rest of the week," I said. "You need to go get anything to hold you over?" He shook his head. "I've got everything I need, but thanks anyway." I closed my eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. Later that day, Peter and I went to see the boys. After we ate, I brought them all up on the day's events. "So, is Mom going to prison?" John asked. "It looks that way, son. Probably for a very long time." He got very quiet after that. I knew I would have my work cut out for me. It's hard enough being a single parent, but now the boys would have to deal with their mother being in prison. Thank God I have loving and understanding in-laws who love the boys as much as I do. I thought to myself. The rest of the week went by pretty quick, now that I knew the boys and I would be safe. Marion told me Wednesday that Kay had been brought back to Pittsburgh. Her arraignment was set for Thursday, so I made it a point to be at the courthouse. As I watched, Kay was brought in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands and feet shackled, with chains connecting to another chain around her waist. It took no time at all for the judge to order her held without bail. She sobbed as they led her back out. Her lawyer, a public defender, asked me if I could bring the boys to the jail to visit her. I informed him that the boys had made it clear they did not want to see her ever again. Marion informed me that the divorce papers were ready to be served and asked if I wanted to be present that Friday when the process server gave them to her. I agreed and met him at the jail. They brought Kay into the visiting area, still shackled. She looked up at me and gave a wan smile. I just glared at her. The process server approached her and asked if she was Kay McKnight. "I am," she said. He gave her the papers and stepped back. As I watched, she pulled the papers out and began sobbing. Normally, I would have offered to console her, but not anymore. I stepped forward and handed her a pen. "Sign the papers," which, I told her. "Aren't I getting anything?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Not no, but hell no, you're not going to need anything where you're going anyway." "Can I at least see the boys?" she asked. I shook my head. "They don't want to see you anymore. As far as the boys and I are concerned, you're dead to us. And speaking of dead, you know your partner in crime was killed the day they tried to arrest him." I heard, "Please, Shane, forgive me. No, I loved you with all my heart for 13 years or more. And how did you repay me? By lying, cheating, and then robbing me of the ability to ever have children of my own. I hate you with every fiber of my being, and I'll never, ever forgive you for what you did to us. Now, sign the divorce papers and be done with it." Sobbing, she slowly picked up the pen and signed the papers on all the lines Marion had marked. When she finished, I handed the packet over to the process server. "Thank you. I'll get this right back to Mrs. Hawkins, and she'll get them filed with the court." I watched as he left, then turned back to Kay. "I just want to know one thing, Kay," I said. She looked up at me. "What?" she asked. "Why? Why did you do it?" She shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, because I wanted to and I could, I guess. And look at where that's gotten you?" I asked. I shook my head. "You have some serious issues, but that's not my problem anymore." I looked around the Stark room. "You know, I have a feeling you're going to die behind walls just like these. And you know what?" "No, Shane." "What?" she asked. "I can't wait to piss on your grave when you do," I said, throwing her own words back at her. She began sobbing, but I didn't care. "One last thing from the boys and I added." "What?" she asked, looking more forlorn than I had ever seen her before. I brought up both hands and extended my middle fingers. "Screw you, witch," I said before turning away. I could hear her sobbing uncontrollably as I walked away. Too bad, I thought. Kay's murder-for-hire trial went fairly quick. Because the boys had also been targeted in her scheme, she was sentenced to 25 years to life. The federal drug investigation dragged on for a few more months, and Kay was eventually given an additional life sentence for her role in what prosecutors officially labeled a criminal enterprise. She could have received a death sentence since the drugs she gave McGregor were ultimately linked to at least 2 deaths. Dan was tried separately for his role and also received a life sentence. Life for the boys and I went on. They never wanted to visit their mother, so I respected their wishes and didn't push it, although Cliff and Julie did go see their daughter once a month. It took a while to get used to being a single parent. Cliff and Julie helped a lot, and the boys enjoyed spending time with their grandparents. Julie kept pushing for me to find a nice girl and settle down, but I simply wasn't ready. After what Kay did, I wasn't sure I could ever trust or love another woman again. I did, however, get the vasectomy reversed a couple weeks after Kay signed the divorce papers. Although the doctor said it could take a while before I could father any children, a few weeks after Kay signed the divorce, Marion contacted me, saying she had something for me. What? I asked. You'll need to come by my office, she said. So, I went. When I got there, she pulled out a bottle of champagne she had in a bucket of ice and poured a couple glasses. She handed me one, along with an envelope. Go on. Open it, she said. I opened the envelope and found a check for $5 million, signed by Dr. Winstead. I looked at her, shocked. How did you manage this? I asked. Well, she said, I convinced Dr. Winstead that it would be in his best interest to settle with you. After I pointed out the potentially destructive and embarrassing divorce his wife would almost certainly want and the damage to his reputation as a scholar and a healer, he decided to settle out of court rather than try to explain why he had you undergo an unnecessary medical procedure after getting your wife pregnant. Wow, remind me to never get on your bad side. She laughed. That's your take after taxes, by the way, and he also paid all your fees and expenses. He must be a very rich man, I said. She shook her head. He is. He gave more than that to charity last year alone, so he's not hurting too bad. She lifted her glass in a toast and I joined her. My self-imposed exile from women lasted about 5 years. It was then I met Lori Reynolds, one of John's teachers. Like me, she was a single parent with one son, a year younger than John. She was also a divorcee and trusted men about as much as I trusted women. We dated for about a year until I screwed up enough courage to pop the question. She accepted, and we got married a couple months later. About a year after that, she gave birth to a girl, Sarah Jane, named after both our mothers. Tears filled my eyes the first time I held that little bundle of joy. Lori realized that Sarah was the first child I had actually fathered and held me tight. I called the boys and their grandparents into the room and turned Sarah around so they could see her. Boys, I said as Cliff and Julie looked on. Meet your new sister, Sarah Jane. They took right to her and I knew everything would be all right. As Lori, the children and I moved ahead with the rest of our lives, Kay's ended up going downhill and lasted just about another 6 years or so after Sarah's birth. A few months after her first conviction, Kay was diagnosed with HIV and was separated from the rest of the prison population. She died from full-blown AIDS about 13 years after that initial diagnosis. With no one willing to claim her body, she was buried in a potter's field, with a simple marker bearing her prisoner number. I wanted so bad to fulfill my promise to piss on her grave, but Lori convinced me otherwise. Come on, sit down here with me, she said as I stepped on the back porch. As I sat down, she poured me a cup of her chamomile tea. I thanked her and took a sip, savoring the aroma. She looked at me for a moment before she said anything. Shane, I know how hard it's been for you to get past what Kay did, but you have to let it go and move forward, she said. It's so damn hard, babe, I said, and it still hurts like hell. I know, she said. You know, if I thought it would do any good, I'd go with you and piss on her grave with you. You know that, don't you? I nodded my head. Yeah, I said. But she's gone now, and she can never hurt you again, Lori said. Look at it this way. Kay suffered with AIDS for almost the same length of time you were married to her. She died in that awful place, unloved, unforgiven, forsaken, and all but forgotten. She's paid the ultimate price for what she did. What more could you possibly do? I had to admit, she had a point. Have you told the boys yet? She asked. By now, all of the boys had left home and were in college. I told John and Robert, I said. At first, they thought I was talking about you. Then I told them I was referring to their birth mother. How did they take it? She asked. They really didn't seem to care, I said. What does that tell you? She asked. They've moved on, I guess, I said in response. That's right, they've moved on. And so should you. Shane, you're the best husband a girl could ever want. And you're the best father any child could ever ask for. Think about it. You loved and raised John and Robert even after you learned you weren't their biological father. You accepted and adopted Mark, even though you weren't his biological father. He's a good boy, I said. She smiled. Thanks in large part to you. You taught him what it means to be a man, and I know for a fact he thinks of you as his real father." We looked at Sarah, who was playing in the yard. "Didn't you tell me once that Kay wanted that Dan guy to give her a daughter?" Lori asked. "Yeah, that's right," I said. It seemed like an eternity had passed since that fateful Friday night, but I never forgot what she said. "Just think, if she hadn't been so stupid, greedy, and selfish, you just might have given her that daughter, and Sarah would never have been born." I had to admit, she was right. I hadn't thought of the irony of the whole situation before. I gave my wife a kiss. Suddenly, I heard Sarah as she came up to us, holding a white flower with 3 petals. "Daddy, look what I have for you." I looked up as she handed the flower to me. I recognized it as a white trillium, a flower that grows in abundance in the parks here. Kay would often make small bouquets with them. I liked the white variety, but I hated the rotten odor of the red ones. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said. "That lady said you really like these," Sarah said. Lori and I looked over the yard, but didn't see anyone. "What lady?" Lori asked. "That one," Sarah said, pointing to the area of the yard where she had been playing. We looked, but saw no one. Chills running down our spine. We looked at each other. There was no indication that anyone had ever been there. "What else did the lady say?" Lori asked. Sarah shrugged her shoulders. "She said to tell you she's sorry for everything and wants you to forgive her," Sarah said, looking at me. I still saw no one, but I noticed the vegetation sway slightly, as if touched by a light breeze. We felt a sudden blast of cold air, but it was gone as fast as it came. I looked at Lori, a tear beginning to form in my eye. I nodded my head. "Maybe it's time I do," I said, knowing it would be the hardest thing I had ever done. Lori smiled and Sarah hugged my neck. After all, Kay was now dead and buried, a part of my past. These 2 girls are my present and my future, I thought, and deserved my full love and attention. "I forgive you, Kay," I whispered, looking up at the sky. Sarah hugged me tighter and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Daddy. Thank you." She crawled off my lap and went running back into the yard. I looked at my wife, wondering what the hell just happened. She smiled and kissed me full on the lips. At that moment, I felt happier and more content than I had in a very long time, as if a huge burden had been lifted from my shoulders. Maybe, I thought to myself, happiness really is the best revenge. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.